High in the Appalachian ridges, where smoke clings to the pines and the mountains guard their silence, a story grew in whispers. Men spoke of it around fire pits, passing it like a warning carried on the wind. They told of two brothers, bound by blood and secrecy, who brought sons into the world, sons hidden away in shacks and hollows, their bodies twisted, their faces marked by deformities that defied understanding. This was not legend alone. This was a reality buried in the soil of isolation, where men lived hard, spoke little, and kept each other's secrets. The brothers raised their sons in the dark, away from watchful eyes, away from judgment, away from mercy, and the echoes of what they did still hang over those hills today. This is the chilling story of the inbred brothers who hid their deformed sons in Appalachia, and how silence became their strongest weapon. If you're drawn to unsettling tales like this, strange stories carved out of hidden corners of history, hit like and subscribe. Share this with another man who enjoys grim mysteries, and let's dive deeper together. The Appalachian Hills were a land of men hardened by coal dust, timber axes, and long winters. Every cabin, every shack, every hollow carried stories passed between fathers, sons, and brothers when the nights grew heavy. Whispers began among groups of men working the mines, sharpening tools, or sitting outside rough-hewn cabins with pipes in their mouths. They spoke quietly, not with laughter, but with unease that stirred the smoke around them. These whispers spoke of hidden sons, boys twisted in body, faces marked by deformities that unsettled even the most weathered miners. None had seen them clearly, yet each man claimed to know someone who had. When such talk drifted across firelit gatherings, older men hushed the younger. They muttered that some things were best left alone, that certain shadows belonged to the mountains, not to curious tongues. The silence always returned stronger. The story centered on two brothers who lived deeper in the ridges than most dared to tread. Men knew them only by surname, passed through gritted teeth, as though speaking it summoned something best forgotten. The brothers had built their cabins far from roads, accessible only by trails worn by boots and wagon wheels. Men delivering goods often refused to climb those paths, claiming unease and the sense of eyes watching. It was said the brothers rarely appeared in town, and when they did, their stares kept others at a distance. Hard men avoided them, and those who spoke with them carried unease for days after. The mystery deepened when whispers arose of boys never seen outside, never brought to town, never walking the trails. These were not ordinary sons, men claimed, but boys twisted by bloodlines too close together. Some swore they had glimpsed shapes in the windows, bent figures, broad foreheads, limbs curled in unnatural ways. No proof was ever offered, yet the weight of rumor grew heavier with each telling. Fathers warned sons not to wander near that ridge. Hunters avoided the game trails that curved toward the brothers' land. Even trappers spoke of snares left empty, as though animals sensed the place was wrong. Yet curiosity stirred among certain men, especially younger ones. They dared each other to venture near, to see if the shadows in the cabin windows were real. Few admitted what they found, if anything at all. One lumberjack claimed he saw a boy crouched against the doorway, his head larger than natural, his mouth twisted into something between a grin and a cry. He swore on his father's name before abandoning the tale. Another miner told of hearing low cries from within the cabin walls, voices of boys that never reached the timberline. He said the sound carried sadness deeper than the coal shafts themselves. Still, men argued whether such accounts were real or drunk exaggerations. But no matter the debate, the story always ended in the same uneasy silence, an understanding that some truths were better ignored. The hills themselves seemed to guard the secret. Fog clung longer around the ridge where the brothers lived. Trees leaned in close, as if nature itself wished to hide whatever lurked behind those boarded windows. Generations of men repeated the whispers. Fathers told sons by firelight not to frighten them, but to warn them, Stay clear of that ridge. Stay clear of those brothers. Some secrets are not ours to disturb. And so the tale survived, carried by men who spoke in half-truths and shadows. The deformed sons were never seen in daylight, yet their presence haunted every conversation, as though silence itself gave them life. By the time strangers came to those hills, the whispers had grown into legend. But for the men who lived there, it was never legend. It was a truth carved deep into the Appalachian stone. The two brothers at the center of the tale were men carved out of the hardest wood Appalachia had to offer. They lived far beyond the edge of town, cut off from most. Each brother carried a reputation that spread faster than smoke from a coal stove. Men said their eyes were cold, their words scarce, their presence enough to drain warmth from gatherings. Their bloodline was known to be tangled, with men marrying within kin for generations. Old-timers muttered that such choices twisted branches of the family tree until nothing grew straight. The brothers embodied that warning. Unlike most men in the mountains, they worked for themselves. No mine claimed their sweat. No sawmill heard their axes. They trapped, they hunted, and they survived on the stubborn land alone. Some said they learned from their father, a man remembered for violence and silence in equal measure. Others claimed the brothers grew crueler than him, cut from the same stone but sharpened by isolation. When they came to town, rarely and grudgingly, men watched them carefully. They traded furs, salt pork, and moonshine, but offered little talk. Their stares cut conversations short, and no man lingered near them. Stories swirled about fights in which both brothers fought as one, fists swinging until stronger men backed away. No one challenged them lightly, for their bond was iron and their rage left scars. They built their cabins deep into the ridges, side by side yet apart from all others. Timber walls leaned heavy against the mountain winds, smoke curling from chimneys like signals no man wished to read. Other men wondered how they managed to survive winters alone. Supplies were scarce, yet neither brother asked for help. They endured in silence, as if bound by a pact only they understood. What made them feared most was not what they did openly, but what was whispered about what happened behind closed doors. The hidden sons became the darkest part of their legend. Hunters told of hearing hammering deep at night, when no man worked. They said the brothers were boarding up windows, sealing light from inside, keeping shadows hidden even from the moon. Some swore they glimpsed figures at the edge of the cabins, small, stooped, unfamiliar shapes. The brothers dragged them back inside quickly, barking curses into the night. Afterward, silence returned thicker than fog. The bond between the brothers was unbreakable. They trusted no one else, answered to no authority, and kept their secrets buried beneath pine needles and rock. Together they became a wall too strong for others to breach. Men in town often debated whether both were equally guilty or if one brother led while the other followed. But no answer came, for the brothers revealed nothing, their faces stone, their lives unreadable. Each passing year only hardened their image. Beards grew wild, eyes sank deeper, shoulders hunched heavier with secrets. They looked less like men of flesh and more like shadows carved from the mountains themselves. Despite their reputation, some younger men tried to test them, poking for weakness. None succeeded. The brothers stood unshaken, their silence louder than threats, their presence enough to crush any challenge. In the end, what terrified men most was not their strength or violence, but their secrecy. Two brothers bound by blood and mystery, hiding sons no one was meant to see, haunted Appalachia like ghosts of flesh. And so the legend of the brothers grew, not through what they revealed, but through what they hid. Their lives became warnings, carved into memory by men who dared not speak too loudly of them. Appalachia was a land where isolation shaped men as much as hunger or weather. Cabins stood far apart, trails wound endlessly, and neighbors were often more distant than the mountains themselves. Men grew up learning to rely only on brothers, fathers, and uncles. Survival meant strength, silence, and suspicion of outsiders. That suspicion became the soil in which darker secrets took root. In towns where coal dust coated every beard and hands calloused from axes, men valued loyalty above all. To betray another's silence was to break the only law many truly respected. The brothers understood this code well. They lived farther out than anyone, unreachable by most, but still wrapped in the unspoken agreement. What a man chose to hide was not another's business. Isolation gave the brothers room to breathe, but it also gave them cover. Their cabins became fortresses, shielded by distance, silence, and the reluctance of other men to pry. Hunters spoke of traveling for days without crossing another cabin. Trappers admitted they avoided certain ridges entirely, knowing the brothers kept watch. In such solitude, secrets grew like vines around stone. Men from town might pass by once or twice a year, carrying salt, flour, or steel. They came, traded, and left quickly, never lingering, never asking questions that would only sour the air. Silence became currency. Every man kept his own hidden scars, moonshine stills, stolen rifles, debts unpaid. To expose another meant risking your own secrets being dragged into daylight. The brothers thrived in that culture. Even sheriffs understood the code. They rode only where absolutely required, avoiding hollows where men preferred to govern themselves. Paper laws carried little weight in valleys where iron and blood ruled first. In such an environment, the brothers' hidden sons could remain unseen for years. No one pressed too close, no one demanded answers, and the mountains themselves seemed to swallow the truth whole. Stories spread, but always as whispers. Men told them quietly, careful not to be overheard by the wrong ears. Every tale ended with the same warning: leave them alone. That ridge isn't yours to know. Isolation did more than hide the brothers' actions. It bred fear. The farther men stayed, the more the legend twisted into something larger, more haunting, until no one knew where truth ended and shadow began. Each cabin in those ridges carried secrets, but none compared to what the brothers kept. Their sons remained ghosts, alive, breathing, suffering, but unseen by all except the men who guarded them. Men explained it by saying isolation warped judgment. Alone too long, a man's mind bent in strange ways. The brothers were the proof, two men consumed by their own world, unchecked by outside eyes. No preacher visited those ridges, no schoolmaster called the boys to learning, no elder came knocking with advice. The brothers' world was closed, sealed, and self-made, cut off from all outside influence. For generations, men warned that isolation hardened hearts and twisted families. The brothers were living proof of that prophecy. Secrecy bred in their cabins like smoke that never escaped the chimney. In the end, isolation became their shield and their curse. It let them hide what no man should ever hide, while ensuring those secrets grew darker the longer they remained unseen. Thus the Appalachian silence deepened, with whispers drifting down from the ridge like fog. And men below carried those whispers carefully, never daring to climb high enough to see if they were true. Rumors of the brothers' sons carried a different weight than ordinary gossip. Men spoke of them as though they were specters, half-human shapes glimpsed through cracks, never stepping into the open daylight. Each whisper described the boys as twisted in form. Some spoke of bent spines, others of oversized skulls, or faces marked by deformities that unsettled even the toughest miner hardened by underground shadows. Hunters told of catching faint movement near the cabins. Boys crouched low, their limbs crooked, their heads lolling strangely. Before anyone could get closer, the brothers dragged them back inside and slammed doors. Miners swore they heard muffled cries drifting from the cabins at night, sounds neither animal nor man could easily explain. The voices carried pain, but also the undeniable rhythm of young lungs. No one in town had ever seen the boys standing among other children. They never walked to rivers, never fished beside men, never carried wood for fires. Their lives remained completely hidden. The few glimpses described them as pale, as though untouched by sun. Men said their skin seemed almost translucent, their eyes wide, their bodies trembling when dragged into the doorway by their fathers. Fear surrounded every account. Men who spoke of seeing the sons often swore never to return near that ridge. The images clung to them like coal dust, impossible to wash away. Some wondered whether the deformities were punishment for blood too closely tied. Others claimed the mountains themselves cursed the brothers for their choices, bending the bodies of their sons into haunting shapes. Men whispered that the brothers trained the boys to remain silent, to hide at the sound of footsteps, to scuttle like shadows whenever another man approached the cabins. Silence was enforced like law. A trapper once claimed he saw a boy chained to a post outside for only moments before being yanked inside again. The memory haunted him, yet he refused to speak further about it. Others described hearing thuds, as though bodies struck timber walls from within. The cabins groaned at night, and men who camped nearby swore those sounds were not natural movements of wood. Still, no outsider pressed too far. Fear of the brothers outweighed curiosity. A man might wonder, but he would not risk walking into a place guarded by violence and secrets thicker than pine. The sons became myths, yet myths grounded in unsettling detail. Every description differed, yet every account agreed. They were not boys like others. They carried deformities no man could mistake. Generations of men debated whether such boys could truly exist. But when hunters described the same crooked shapes, when miners described the same cries, disbelief became harder to cling to. Isolation meant the boys' lives were spent indoors, away from sun, away from rivers, away from any freedom. They were kept not as sons should be, but as shadows behind boarded windows. The greatest horror lay not in their deformities, but in their silence. No laughter echoed from those cabins. No voices of youth carried through the hollows. Only groans, cries, and whispers of suffering. And so they became known as the sons nobody saw. Hidden away, denied the chance to walk among other men, left only as rumors sustained by fleeting glimpses and uneasy testimonies. Their existence was both certain and uncertain. Men knew they were there, but none could fully prove it. And that uncertainty became the very power of the legend, growing darker with every retelling. In Appalachia, tales passed between men like smoke from campfires, winding, curling, impossible to hold. Yet some stories carried sharper edges, and the whispers about the brothers' sons became one of those. Men argued over whether the boys were real, or if isolation had simply birthed another mountain legend. Folklore thrived in those ridges, and many believed the tale belonged alongside ghost stories. Still, unlike ordinary folklore, the story of the hidden sons carried details too specific to dismiss. Men described deformities in ways too vivid to be invented easily by imagination alone. Hunters said they saw twisted limbs. Miners said they heard cries unlike any beast. Trappers described shadows that scurried like men, but moved in ways no healthy body ever could. Skeptics argued whiskey fueled such visions. After long nights with moonshine, men often claimed to see things. Yet too many separate accounts aligned for whiskey alone to explain the story. The brothers themselves did little to disprove the rumors. Their silence, their secrecy, their violent protection of their ridge, all of it fed the belief that something real, something human, was hidden inside. Some men believed the tale grew because Appalachia needed explanations for strangeness. When animals avoided trails near the cabins, or when fog clung heavier there, men gave those signs meaning through story. Others insisted they had seen enough proof to remove all doubt. They spoke quietly, eyes lowering, voices tight. They claimed what they saw would not allow sleep to come easily again. Folklore served many purposes among men. It warned, entertained, explained. But this story did something different. It unsettled. It reminded men that truth could hide close by, behind boarded walls and silence. The more it spread, the more difficult it became to separate truth from legend. A boy chained outside might be real, or it might be another man's attempt to sound braver than he was. Each retelling added weight. Some men swore the sons numbered more than 2, perhaps 5, maybe more. Others claimed the brothers locked them in basements or tied them in lofts above cabins. The debate itself became fuel. Whether real or not, the story grew, feeding on silence and secrecy. The absence of proof only made men lean closer, desperate for confirmation either way. Folklore often died when truth arrived. But here, truth never came. The brothers offered no words, the sons remained hidden, and the silence itself kept the legend alive with greater force. Elders said Appalachia thrived on such half-truths. Men did not need certainty to believe. A story with enough weight could carry itself like stone rolling down a slope. Impossible to stop. Yet beneath the layers of myth, men sensed there was something genuine. Too many details, too many sightings, too many whispers overlapping. The legend may have grown, but its roots were real. Folklore blurred with fact until they became one. No man could separate them. The tale lived on, half truth and half nightmare, woven into Appalachian life like timber grain beneath a craftsman's hands. And so the sons nobody saw became both real and unreal, both myth and memory. In that balance, the story became unshakable, a legend immune to time, carved deep into Appalachian stone. In Appalachian ridges, silence was more than habit. It was survival. Men learned early that words could cost dearly. A careless tongue could invite violence, feud, or exposure of secrets best buried. Every man carried something hidden. One might keep a still running deep in the woods. Another might shelter a brother wanted by law. Another might carry debts unpaid. Silence bound them all. The brothers thrived under that culture. Their cabins remained untouchable not because men trusted them, but because men had been taught never to challenge another's secrecy. To pry was to risk retaliation. Miners spoke little of what they saw. Trappers avoided questions. Even sheriffs rode past quietly, unwilling to test boundaries. Each man weighed silence against danger, and silence always won. When whispers of the hidden sons spread, they spread cautiously. Men shared them only among trusted companions, usually at fire pits, where flames burned words before they could drift too far. If a stranger pressed too hard, men tightened their jaws and shook their heads. No one wanted to be the one blamed for stirring trouble in those ridges. Silence was respect, but also fear. To speak against another man's choices risked igniting feuds lasting generations. No one wished to be remembered for breaking the mountain's code of secrecy. The brothers' presence alone demanded silence. Their stares froze tongues, their fists ended arguments, and their reputation warned men against pushing further. No lawman or preacher could compete with that kind of command. Generations of fathers told sons the same lesson. Mind your own. Don't carry another man's story. What's his stays his. Those words stitched silence into the very fabric of the hills. So when the sons were glimpsed, when cries were heard, when shadows slipped behind timbered walls, men looked away. They convinced themselves silence was safer than truth. Safer for everyone. Men rationalized it by saying, the mountains judge their own. If deformities existed, they were punishment or fate. It was not the role of other men to interfere. The silence thickened over time. Each whisper carried warning not to repeat it. Each rumor ended with a firm stare reminding the listener that talk could bring consequences no man wished to carry. Even lawmen respected the code. Deputies knew which ridges to avoid. Sheriffs signed papers but rarely rode into hollows where silence ruled. Paper law bent before unwritten mountain law, And so the sons remained unseen, shielded not only by cabins and distance, but by silence itself. Every man who knew something became part of the wall keeping truth buried. The culture of silence was more powerful than bars, stronger than locks. It chained tongues and minds, ensuring the brothers' secrets remained safe within Appalachian shadows. For outsiders, it seemed cowardice, but for men within the ridges, it was wisdom. Silence meant survival, and survival outweighed justice when the cost of speaking was blood. In the end, silence was both shield and curse. It protected men from conflict, but it also ensured horrors could continue unchecked, hidden in plain sight beneath the quiet weight of Appalachian law. For years, the brothers' ridge remained shrouded in secrecy. Men whispered, but no one pressed too far. Yet secrets, no matter how tightly guarded, eventually find cracks through which truth slips. The first discoveries were accidental. Hunters tracking deer strayed too close. Trappers checking snares wandered off path. When they returned, their eyes carried a weight heavier than words could explain. One hunter swore he saw a boy crouched near the cabin door, his head swollen, his arms trembling like branches in wind. Before he could react, a brother yanked the boy inside. A trapper claimed he found strange footprints near his snares. Small, misshapen, dragging oddly in the soil. He followed them only until dread sank heavy, then turned back without collecting his catch. Miners delivering salt told of hearing muffled cries while passing the ridge. They described voices low, strained, echoing against cabin timbers. None lingered long. Each man spurred his mule quicker down the slope. The most chilling discovery came when a young woodsman wandered near after dusk. He claimed to see two boys peering from slats in the wall, their faces twisted, eyes wide with desperate hunger. When he returned to town, his voice trembled as he swore the truth. But older men hushed him quickly, reminding him that such talk could bring trouble none of them wished. Discovery always came paired with silence. Men saw, men heard, but men kept quiet. The mountain code weighed heavier than proof. Evidence dissolved in shadows before reaching the wider world. Still, each sighting carried details that added to the legend. Crooked limbs, swollen heads, pale skin, trembling mouths. The stories differed in shape, but aligned in essence. The boys were real. Some men questioned whether the sons even understood they were hidden. Living always inside with only brothers for company, perhaps they never knew life beyond timber walls and locked doors. Others wondered what they thought of outsiders glimpsing them. Did they feel shame, anger, or only fear taught by their fathers, drilled into them to retreat whenever footsteps echoed too near? The brothers' reaction confirmed suspicions. Any man who lingered near the ridge was met with threats, rifles visible, voices sharp. Their aggression served as both shield and warning, leave or face consequences. One deputy once attempted to ride up, curious after hearing whispers too often repeated. He returned pale, silent, refusing to speak of what he saw. He resigned his badge weeks later. Discovery thus became more curse than revelation. Men who witnessed the truth carried it like a burden, unable to share without risking violence, unable to forget once shadows entered their eyes. The sons themselves remained elusive, appearing only in fragments, a face at a slat, a hand pressed to glass, a figure hunched against timber. Enough to confirm, never enough to understand. Every discovery ended with silence spreading stronger. Men spoke less, avoided the ridge more, convinced themselves that ignorance was safer than knowledge. Truth existed, but truth was chained by fear. And so the story of discovery remained half-hidden, glimpses, sightings, fragments, always enough to unsettle, never enough to force change. The ridge kept its secrets, and the brothers kept their sons. The mountains swallowed each revelation like stone swallowing rain. Discovery never spread beyond whispers among men, ensuring the hidden sons remained a secret, alive, haunting, but never fully seen. When word of the hidden sons drifted through Appalachian towns, reactions split sharply. Some men dismissed it as drunken fantasy, while others leaned closer, convinced the truth was darker than any imagination. Old men shook their heads slowly, warning younger ones not to repeat the tale too loudly. "Some things best stay buried," they muttered, eyes narrowing as if speaking too much invited danger. Coal miners swapped stories during long shifts underground. In darkness, whispers carried heavier weight. Men described twisted shapes, trembling voices, and pale faces hidden in cabins where no daylight ever reached. Lumberjacks passing through valleys carried tales to other ridges. Each retelling added slight changes: more sons, stranger deformities, harsher conditions. Rumors grew like vines, twisting truth until no man could untangle it. Trappers in remote hollows repeated the stories as warnings. They told companions to avoid snares near the ridge, claiming strange noises spooked animals, leaving traps empty as if nature itself avoided that ground. Some men treated the tale like cautionary folklore, reminding others what happened when kin intermarried too closely. "Blood must mix wide," they'd say, "or the mountain takes its toll." The brothers became proof. Others mocked the rumors openly, scoffing at descriptions of hunched shadows and oversized skulls. Yet even they avoided the ridge at night, unwilling to test bravado against secrets no one wished to uncover. Rumors reached deputies, but lawmen tread carefully. None wanted conflict with brothers known for violence. Official reports remained blank, while whispers spread unchecked, filling silence where written records refused to go. Traveling merchants repeated the legend beyond Appalachia. They spoke of hidden boys in mountain cabins, fueling fascination in towns far removed. For outsiders, the tale became entertainment rather than haunting truth. Among mountain men, however, laughter rarely accompanied the story. Their reactions carried unease, born of knowing silence and secrecy often concealed something far worse than words dared to reveal. Arguments sparked in taverns. One man insisted he saw a boy chained outside. Another swore no such sons existed. Voices rose, fists clenched, but eventually silence reclaimed the room as always. Reactions revealed more about the men themselves than the story. Skeptics clung to denial as shield. Believers carried fear in their eyes, knowing too much truth might invite curses none wanted. Even those who scoffed at the idea avoided mocking the brothers directly. No man wanted to provoke violence. Silence and caution guided tongues, keeping ridicule limited to safe company only. Younger men dared one another to approach the ridge, fueled by bravado and liquor. Some returned shaken, swearing they heard cries. Others returned silent, unwilling to admit fear, yet refusing to go back. Each retelling strengthened the legend's hold. Reactions multiplied, but certainty never came. Rumors remained fluid, changing shape like mist, impossible to capture, yet impossible to fully dismiss. Some men claimed the hidden sons deserved sympathy. Lives lived in darkness, unseen, unheard. Others argued pity was wasted, insisting the boys were curses rather than victims. Division widened, but silence prevailed. Ultimately, reactions fed the story rather than ended it. Rumors spread further, growing sharper with every voice. Yet none of it pierced the ridge itself, where silence remained the brothers' strongest weapon. And so the tale survived, fueled by men's whispers, strengthened by doubt, carried forward by every reaction. Rumor became memory, memory became legend, and the legend lived on beyond the ridge itself. The hidden sons lived in shadows, their days defined not by sunlight, but by timber walls and silence. Their lives were shaped by confinement, secrecy, and the cold weight of their father's choices. Inside the cabins, light came dim through cracks between boards. The boys knew little of rivers, forests, or trails. Their world was narrow, filled with smoke, whispers, and the heavy footsteps of men. Their deformities became chains stronger than iron. Crooked limbs made movement painful. Oversized skulls drew stares when glimpsed, and trembling hands betrayed their fragility. Yet even in suffering, they breathed, they endured, they lived. Men who caught fleeting glimpses described them as pale as ash. Without sun, their skin held ghostly tones. They looked like shadows of boys rather than sons of flesh and blood. Inside, they likely passed time listening to the brothers. Voices were their only company, commands their only lessons. Silence became language, obedience the only skill allowed to grow. Food was meager, scraps from hunts, cornmeal, salted pork. The sons ate what was placed before them, their frail bodies sustained just enough to continue, never strong enough to escape or wander freely. Their deformities made labor impossible. While other boys in the mountains carried wood or swung axes, these sons remained hidden, unable to join men in tasks that gave meaning to survival. Loneliness marked their existence. No laughter echoed, no games of stickball, no races through fields. Instead, there was only quiet, interrupted by muffled cries that leaked through walls on long nights. Some men speculated the boys never knew how different they were. Without comparison, without seeing other children, perhaps they thought their bent forms and twisted features were simply part of being alive. Others argued the boys must have known. Pain speaks louder than silence, and their bodies carried pain daily. Each step, each breath reminded them that something within had been shaped unnaturally. Life without freedom grew heavy. When voices from outside reached their ears, trappers passing, hunters calling, the boys must have felt both fear and yearning, torn between curiosity and obedience. Their fathers enforced secrecy with harshness. Men who glimpsed the ridge described sharp voices and threats from the brothers, ensuring the sons learned never to step beyond the doorway unless dragged. Yet despite deformities, despite confinement, the sons were human. They felt hunger, fear, sadness, perhaps even moments of fleeting joy when allowed a glimpse of firelight or the sound of a river. Legends claimed the boys sometimes pressed hands to cracks in the walls, reaching toward air they never breathed fully. Men who saw that gesture remembered it more vividly than any deformity. Their lives were not entirely invisible. Every whisper, every rumor, every fleeting sighting gave them presence beyond the cabins. They became shadows that haunted men's conversations, reminders of cruelty hidden in silence. The greatest tragedy was not their twisted bodies, but their stolen existence. To be born into darkness, kept from freedom, denied even the chance of brotherhood with other men. That was the deepest wound. The sons lived, suffered, and endured in ways outsiders could only imagine. Their days blurred together, unseen but unforgettable, existing as the clearest evidence of what silence and secrecy could allow. And so their lives remained bound within the cabins, unseen, unheard, yet unforgettable to those who caught even the briefest glimpse. Shadows of boys, hidden sons, trapped in silence until whispers carried them outward. The law in the mountains was a fragile thing. Deputies wore badges, but their authority rarely stretched beyond the town square. On the ridges, rifles and silence ruled stronger than paper. Rumors of hidden sons reached lawmen more than once. Deputies heard whispers in taverns, trappers spoke in hushed tones, hunters swore under oath. Yet official records stayed blank, untouched by uncomfortable truths. One deputy, young and determined, tried to gather statements. He rode between cabins, asking men what they had seen. Faces turned cold, voices flat, replies short. The mountain code silenced more than fear. Older sheriffs understood better. They knew confronting the brothers meant blood. Bringing law to the ridge was not a matter of warrants or signatures. It was a matter of survival. Deputies weighed the cost. Was justice worth a bullet? Was paperwork worth a feud with men who had nothing left to lose? Often silence seemed safer than trying to enforce rules. Some men argued the law failed the sons, that justice demanded intervention. But others countered that law had no place on isolated slopes where kin defended kin harder than any statute ever could. The idea of trial or court became fantasy. No jury of mountain men would convict brothers for keeping sons hidden. Sympathy for outsiders rarely outweighed loyalty to kin and suspicion of authority. Law in the mountains leaned heavily on denial. By refusing to acknowledge what existed, deputies avoided responsibility. If no record was written, no crime was committed, no justice required. This denial stretched into official ledgers. Reports of strange boys never appeared. Arrest logs contained only barroom fights, stolen hogs, unpaid debts. The hidden sons vanished beneath blank pages and silence. Yet whispers of justice lingered. Some men swore one day a brave lawman would march up the ridge, tear open the cabin, and lead the boys into daylight. Hope clung stubbornly. Others scoffed, reminding them the mountains swallowed heroes quicker than villains. "The ridge buries lawmen," an old miner muttered. "Better to mind your own hearth than dig into another's shadows." Even when outsiders pressed, deputies denied. "Nothing there but cabins," they'd insist. "Just wild talk." Denial became armor, protecting not only the brothers but the fragile order of mountain towns. Still, cracks appeared. A few younger deputies admitted unease, confessing they had seen glimpses they could not explain. Yet fear of ridicule and reprisal kept them silent in official chambers. Justice remained an unreachable concept. The law bent beneath rifles, silence, and kinship. Mountain order depended not on fairness, but on survival, and survival meant ignoring truths too dangerous to confront. Men wondered privately what justice would even look like. Taking the boys away? Locking the brothers in jail? No answer seemed right, so the question dissolved into the silence once again. And so, denial became the closest thing to justice. By refusing to see, the law kept peace. By refusing to act, lawmen preserved order, though at the cost of hidden sons' lives. The brothers understood this balance better than anyone. They trusted rifles, silence, and fear to shield their secrets. In the end, justice never climbed the ridge, and denial proved the stronger law. The mountains remained unmoved, swallowing questions whole. Law stayed on paper, justice never arrived, and silence, heavier than stone, kept the hidden sons shackled within their timber walls. Time weighed heavily on the ridge. The brothers, once fierce and unyielding, began to show cracks of age. Their hair thinned, their hands shook, and their once steady rifles no longer aimed true. Hard winters carved deeper lines into their faces. Food grew scarcer, hunts less successful. Deer avoided the ridge, traps stayed empty, and what little could be gathered went mostly to keeping the sons alive. The cabins themselves weakened. Roofs sagged, chimneys crumbled, boards warped from decades of smoke. Men passing nearby swore they saw the structures leaning like tired old bodies ready to collapse into the earth. The sons, frail from birth, grew weaker with age. Their deformities worsened, movements slowed, breathing grew ragged. The once whispered possibility of escape vanished entirely. Survival alone consumed their fading strength. Neighbors noticed the decline, even from afar. Hunters said they heard coughing carried on the wind. Trappers spoke of silence heavier than before, as if the ridge itself held its breath. The brothers fought against time, but age is an enemy no man can outshoot. Their bodies betrayed them, and the strength that once defended secrecy dwindled with every passing season. Food shortages brought desperation. Men whispered that the brothers stole from traps, raided storehouses, even robbed miners' camps under darkness. Though no one caught them directly, suspicion lingered with every missing slab of meat. The sons bore the decline most. Their frail frames wasted, their faces grew hollow. Men who glimpsed them described eyes wide with hunger, hollow as caves, staring from shadows with silent despair. Legends claimed one son died during a bitter winter. Some swore they heard wailing from the ridge, low and guttural, not grief, but rage echoing through frozen trees. Others believed silence swallowed him quietly. The brothers themselves aged into ghosts of their former selves. Their threats carried less fire, their footsteps dragged heavier. Yet even weakened, fear of them lingered, keeping men cautious, keeping tongues restrained. Decline spread beyond their bodies. The ridge, once shielded by silence, became more vulnerable. More men dared climb nearer, curiosity emboldened by the sight of frailty where strength had once ruled. Still, the brothers clung desperately to secrecy. Rifles were lifted, threats were muttered, though weaker now, less convincing. The ridge stood, but cracks widened, exposing truths that could not stay hidden forever. Decline became inevitable. Age, hunger, and decay stripped away the fierce mystery once surrounding the cabins. What remained was sorrow, old men clutching rifles, protecting sons who could barely stand. The sons, trapped by frailty, became specters within the cabins. Their existence shifted from feared to pitied. No longer monsters of rumor, they were boys grown older, wasting away in silence. Men debated whether the ridge would collapse entirely when the brothers finally died. Would the sons be left to starve? Or would outsiders finally uncover them once silence broke? Decline thus became prophecy. Everyone knew the end would come, but none knew how. Only the mountains remained certain. Time devours all men, all secrets, all legacies, no matter how fiercely defended. The ridge, once impenetrable, grew fragile beneath the weight of years. Decline spread like rot through wood and bone alike, ensuring that even the deepest secrets could not withstand the erosion of time. When the brothers finally faded, their cabins remained as hollow shells. Men who dared climb the ridge afterward found only rotting timber, collapsed roofs, and silence that seemed heavier than ever before. Inside those ruins, evidence of the sons lingered. Crude bedding, worn clothing, makeshift stools. No graves were marked, no names etched. Only absence told the story of men hidden too long. The legacy of the ridge spread further than the cabins themselves. Men carried the story beyond valleys, repeating it in camps, taverns, and on long trails until it became legend whispered across states. For mountain men, the tale served as warning. It reminded them that secrecy can rot into cruelty, that kinship twisted too tightly warps into horror. Bloodlines closed upon themselves, and sons bore the cost. Others spoke of it as tragedy. They imagined the hidden sons not as monsters, but as victims, boys who never felt the sun fully, never swung axes, never joined men in laughter. Legends painted the brothers as villains in some tellings, survivors in others. Some men admired their defiance of authority, others condemned their cruelty. Truth dissolved, leaving only fragments bent by perspective. The sons became phantoms in folklore. Around campfires, men described pale faces at cabin slats, trembling limbs glimpsed in moonlight. Whether real memory or embellished myth, the image carved itself into mountain lore. Over time, the ridge itself gained a cursed reputation. Hunters avoided it, trappers set snares elsewhere, travelers walked longer paths rather than cross near where the brothers once stood guard. Younger generations heard the story with wide eyes, asking if it was true. Older men shrugged, unwilling to claim certainty. Truth mattered less than the lesson. Secrecy breeds sorrow, silence carries scars. The hidden son's legacy lingered in every whisper of Appalachian strangeness. Whenever men spoke of odd kin or malformed boys, comparisons pointed back toward that ridge and its long shadow. In towns far removed, the tale morphed into ghost story. Men swore that cries still echoed there, or that deformed figures wandered at night, searching endlessly for lives stolen from them. Yet beneath myth lay reality. Sons lived and suffered in isolation, robbed of choice. Their story remained a scar, etched not into stone, but into memory carried by every man who whispered it. The brothers' legend became inseparable from the mountains themselves. Just as valleys held echoes of miners' songs and ridges carried thunder, the story carried weight, refusing to vanish even as years passed. Men debated endlessly whether the tale warned against pride, secrecy, or defiance. Some said it proved law must stand stronger. Others argued it showed law's weakness and mountains' power to swallow truth. Whatever interpretation, the hidden sons' legacy endured. Their suffering transformed into folklore, their shadows haunting more effectively than their bodies ever could. They lived on, not in flesh, but in memory. The brothers had tried to control their world through silence and rifles, but in the end, legend outlived them. Secrets may remain hidden in life, but death delivers them to story. And so the ridge remained, empty, rotting, but unforgettable. A reminder that silence protects nothing forever, that hidden sons cannot stay hidden, and that even mountains carry legends heavier than stone.